today we're going to do a deeper dive into a very intriguing prospect. This draft is full of them. Jean Montero, international prospect, obviously didn't go the college route, and I'm really excited to talk to Jacob. Jacob, pleasure, and thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Great. And how has the season been for you so far, the college scouting season?
It's been great. I know I've really focused my attention on this Overtime Elite League. I went to all of their home games, covered all of those, and I'm currently working on a story covering the entire league in the first season, interviewing all the players. And John Montero was definitely a standout player in that league.
Yep, absolutely. And as a Knicks show, I'll mention, the Knicks were close to, moving up last year, Jacob, to select another Dominican prospect, Chris Duarte, as well. So, it's worth putting that out there that Jean Montero is from the Dominican Republic, and he's an international prospect, playing in the US, obviously, a crafty guard, something that the Knicks, have been longing for a while. And we're going to dive deeper into his season. Jacob's been closely following that as well. But let's just start by just for the viewers that never heard of it, just to tell the viewers a bit about the Overtime Elite program and how it got set up.
Yeah, so Overtime Elite is a new pathway for 16 to 19-year-olds, is as an alternative to college at the moment. You have 26 players right now. They're each earning at least $100,000 salary. They get a share in the equity in Overtime Elite, and they're split up into 3 teams: Team Elite, Team Overtime, and Team OTE. They'll play against high school programs, and then they'll play interleague games against each other. At the end of the season, they compete for the Overtime Elite Championship, which was won by Team Elite, and each player on the winning team received $10,000.
Nice, yep. Yeah, and as we're seeing, Jacob, there's a lot more routes to the pro game. Obviously, there is the G League, which is getting more and more popular. There is the other overseas routes as well here in Australia, the Next Stars in the NBL. What were your overall impressions of the first season of the OTE program? And do you think it's obviously going to improve, but do you think it was a good, successful first season?
I would say so. The first thing that you have to talk about when it comes to this program is the facility. It's incredible. I know they had an incredible amount of funding. They had investors, Drake, Jeff Bezos, and a ton of NBA stars. So they definitely went all out with the facilities. And then you have a really great coaching staff, former NCAA champion Kevin Ollie as the head coach. And then you've got some former college coaches, former G League coaches on staff. So I think it was definitely a successful year. I saw some really good play. And the biggest thing that I'd note is the improvement from players over the course of the season. Players were constantly improving. So I would say that there was definitely successful aspects of the first season.
Yep, great. And just tying that into that, how many hours a day do you think, would they spend on practice, skill development? And does that ultimately contribute to, do you think, why would you think it might be a better alternative than college for some kids?
Yeah, well, it's really just, I know they are spending a lot of time in the gym. It's really, they wake up, they go to class, they go to the gym, and they're in the gym for hours on end every day. And then it depends for certain players, guys like John Montero who aren't younger. I know the 2023 draft guys, the 2024 draft guys are taking high school classes so they can get their high school diploma. Guys like John are doing either an internship or another program as their school aspect. And so you're constantly seeing these guys in the gym. I went to some practices, and the practices are probably more intense than the games.
Yep. Yeah, that's great. There's another pathway, and obviously the money, at the end of the day, that matters as well. Jean, there's a great video out there. He was able to support some family, back home as well, and obviously, simulate the pro environment, like you said, with practice and other like-minded, skilled players as well. So I guess in diving deeper into Jean's season, um, the first question I'll ask you is he better now than when he joined the program? Do you think, in your eyes?
I would say so. I think that he's really established himself as a dynamic scorer. And then his assist numbers were pretty good. He really was an all around point guard. There were some concerns that we can get into that I had with his game, but overall, he's a very intriguing prospect in this draft class.
Yep. No, definitely. And like I just mentioned in the intro, intriguing in terms of, we're obviously knee deep in March Madness, and people are going crazy over prospects. And I feel like Jean's definitely going under the radar. There's no doubt about it. Obviously, there is the Nike Hoop Summit coming up, which we'll touch on, and Jean's chances of boosting his stock is a clutch client as well. So there is a chance he may not be in the combine. But look, let's start with his strengths. Because I had a nice chat with Rafael Barlow, and he had a chance to see him some ways back at the Basketball Without Borders, competition, and he was going up against Josh Giddey. And Raphael said that to him back then, he looked like the best player on the court. And obviously, a lot of fans are seeing the success Josh Giddey is having in the league right now. So, um, why don't you give us your scouting report on Jean's strengths?
Yeah, the one thing that comes to mind at first is just how much he makes the players around him better. And he plays with a guy like Dom Barlow, who he's a 6'10" forward that can really drive to the hoop, and it works out well with the pick and roll, getting baskets, but then really his 3-point shooting is a definite strength. The shot selection can be a little spotty at times, but when he gets an open shot, there's a good chance he's going to hit it. And then oftentimes during a game, you blink and he'll have 20 points, 10 assists, and you didn't even notice it. So he can quietly put up some really big numbers without having the flashiest game.
Yep, definitely. That comes across on film. The Knicks have a need at point guard, and a lot of fans of the Knicks have had guards that can fill it up. So there is some concerns whether Jean Montero is just a scoring guard. But for me, the highlights I'm seeing, and a very underrated aspect, I think he makes great reads, facilitating wise as well. And the Knicks, they're very, very low in assists. They have a read and react offense with Tom Thibodeau, and they often miss the open man. And from what I'm seeing is, Jean's feel for the game is excellent. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and you notice it because he's obviously a lot more mature than a lot of the other players at OTE. You have 16-year-olds, 17-year-olds that are still kind of figuring out what kind of player they are. I think that John really knows the kind of player he is, and he can play to those strengths. So I think that's a definite plus. And you notice that throughout his play.
Yeah, great. And just before we hit on the weaknesses, just focusing on his strengths, what parts of his game do you think could go to the next level? And also, with further development and his ceiling, is there any kind of NBA comps that come to your mind? And it's okay if you don't have any.
Yeah, the one that comes to my mind, I was just talking with Dash who runs the Overtime Experiment Twitter account. He watched a lot of these games, and I talked to him, and he was looking at the per 40 minutes numbers, and then just their overall play. I would have to say Terry Rozier. There's a lot of similarities in those games. Two smaller guards that can score the ball, that can distribute the ball, and their stats are very similar.
Yep, excellent. That's great. And we have some stats here, which we'll dive further into shortly. As a preview, it's a pleasure to receive these from Jacob. But yeah, I guess Terry Rozier, a lot of fans will be excited to hear that. Given he's not getting that kind of a buzz just yet, is Jean But like we said, the Nike Hoop Summit coming up on April 8th, I believe.
Yeah, I believe that's
Yep,
correct.
yep, yeah. He'll have a chance. Do you see his stock being able to rise? You know, Tankathon currently have him ranked um, in the 23rd selection. So where do you see his his fit in terms of the first round and where he can get to?
Yeah, I think that right now I would agree he's probably in that 20 to 30 range. But I think that with a really good Nike Hoop Summit performance, he could rise up even further than that. It is a really deep class, so there are a lot of guys, but I would say that he can move up, and it will really be, like you said, the competition. There are a lot of question marks about how good was the competition he was playing at Overtime Elite, and how much will that translate to the next level. So playing high level competition at the Nike Hoop Summit, that will be really telling.
Yeah, definitely. And you mentioned the maturity. It's worth mentioning Jean was playing in Spain, I believe, wasn't he, before this season? He had a few seasons in Spain, so that he's often not a lot is said about kids that leave home early or leave their country early to learn the pro life, and that I think that experience is going to hold him well.
Yeah, and that was something that Overtime Elite did a really good job of. I know earlier you mentioned Chris Duarte. His cousin Luis Duarte is a teammate of John's at Overtime Elite. They played together, so it was good seeing those guys. And yeah, it was. They had a lot of international prospects. They did a really good job of bringing in international talent. And in my talks with the league, it sounds like they're going to be bringing in some international competition next season.
Well, that's exciting. Yep, that's great. And yeah, we're joined by Jacob Polacek on Nick's Buzz. Give that like button a shove. And Jacob, now let's talk a bit about the weaknesses. And I want to start with defensively. A lot of Knicks have had a lot of players in the past that are very one-sided players. How is Jean's defense? In your eyes?
He's a good defender. He's not a standout defender in my eyes, and a lot of that is just due to his overall size. And his size is a weakness, I'd say. He's an undersized guard. He's not tiny. He's not. It's not insurmountable, but it's definitely going to be a challenge at the next level, and he'll definitely need to put on some weight to compete at the NBA level.
Yep. Yeah, definitely. And yeah, it's great that you can see him becoming a solid defender. Um, in terms of other weaknesses, what is John's most glaring weakness or concerns that scouts have?
I would say it's the shot selection. Um, that's really been an issue because he will pull up from anywhere on the court, and that a lot of times can be a good thing, but a lot of times that can be a detriment. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes it seems like he just needs to let the offense flow and just get into a rhythm instead of forcing shots, forcing shots from 30 feet out, and that would be the biggest weakness that I've seen. But at a lot of times, if he can start knocking those down consistently, he could turn that weakness into a strength pretty quickly.
Yep. Yeah. No, that's that's something that bears watching. Yeah. And obviously, yeah, like we said, the Nike Hoop Summit. Do you see there's a possibility he'll shut it down after the Nike Hoop Summit? Or do you think they'll be bold and they'll do whatever they can to boost his stock, or I guess be selective with workouts? He's represented by Clutch.
Yeah, I know that everyone wants to talk about Clutch and how there's a chance he's not going to participate. He's not going to participate in the 5-and-5s, all of that. I don't know what he's going to do. I think that it would help him to participate just because, like I said, he didn't have a ton of that competition again. He didn't have any of the competition against the guys that are in this draft class, aside from his teammates. And so having him get that experience and having him show that off in front of NBA scouts, I think that would be a positive.
Yep. And also, like we said, being a mystery prospect, like Josh Giddey was somewhat of a mystery playing down here where a lot of scouts couldn't see. Now, that could go either way. That may not necessarily mean that they're not above some of the level competition. If anything, it could be a team getting a steal, um, which is why it's so important. Which is why I'm so excited to be talking to you about it. Because you've seen firsthand, up and close, with this season at the OTE, and in your eyes, any other weaknesses, I guess that are be it big or small, that you feel like may restrict his ceiling at the next level.
One small weakness that I might note is he can sometimes fall into a rhythm of I can't think of the word, but just it gets where you may not see him putting in as much effort as he can. And I think that he can kind of play down to his competition sometimes, especially when he's playing against high schoolers when they're blowing out a team by 40. That can be a given, but there were times when I'd like to see him maybe put in a little more effort. But then when there were big games, you saw him rise to the occasion.
That's good to hear. That last point you mentioned, because like the topic we can talk about. Did he face good enough competition there to improve? And if he does come to New York City, it's obviously a huge market. He'll be probably trusted with running the point, probably even off the bench. But yeah, to be able to rise for those big games, and that small weakness you mentioned, do you feel like that is just a selective thing, or is that a motor thing? Do you think is there any issue with his motor?
I don't believe there's an issue with his motor. I saw it more as a competition thing in that he didn't need to put in as much effort to get by this high school team that's kind of full of guys that are 3 years younger than him that are, still in high school. So I didn't see it as a motor thing, but you never really know.
Yep. Yeah, absolutely. Well, I appreciate you, delving into some of the weaknesses. What I'll do is I'll bring up some of the stats that we've kindly been able to get, um, and looking at the total traditional stats for everyone to see. You can obviously see 3-point shooting is somewhat of a concern. How did you see his shooting from deep?
Yeah, I think that really ties back to the shot selection. A lot of times when he's open from right outside the 3-point line, he's going to knock it down. But when he's pulling up from a few steps back from the 3-point line, not in the flow of the offense, a lot of times those aren't going to go in. So I see, looking at those 3-point numbers, I don't see that as an indication of how he can shoot. I see that more as an indication of his spotty shot selection.
Okay. Yep. Because look, you do see the attempts. So, he shot 155 attempts this season, and you see it in comparison to every other player on the team, basically.
And to be fair, he is the point guard. He has the ball in his hands a lot more than any of those other guys. But yeah, he could cut back on the threes a little bit.
Yeah. Well, like you said, he carried the team in terms of points, like 394 points in a 23 game season. He was the team's leading scorer. Was tasked to distribute and score. You see the assists, 108.
Yeah.
Yep.
And he's looking at those guys that are pulled up there, and a lot of the starters around him weren't shooters per se. I know guys like Dominic Barlow really improved his shooting this year, but he's still a 6'10" forward that prefers to go to the hoop. And he played with a guy, Luis Duarte, who's more of a shooter, but Luis didn't see the court as much as those guys. So he was asked to take a lot of the scoring load.
Yep. And let's have a quick look at defensively. 80 steals. How did a lot of those steals come about? Were interceptions or 1v1?
A lot of 1v1. He was a pest. He would get up in guys' grill and he would have just a lot of steals, and a lot of those would just, once he gets one, guys get flustered, and it's hard to play against him. So a lot of those can happen in a rhythm, and his ability to play one-on-one and get steals, that was a definite strength.
Okay, that's great. Yep. Obviously, his experience, savviness playing against pros in Europe, size. Size-wise, do you feel like he is a legit 6'2"?
I would say so. Yeah.
Yep.
Like he looked a legit 6'2", maybe 6'1", but I would say 6'2".
Yep. And sort of speed off the burst and vertical and leap. Just as a general athlete, do you see him getting to the cup, with ease at the NBA level, or needing a screen to get separation?
I probably needing a screen early on. I know that it's hard for any rookie to come in and get to the cup without any sort of screen playing ISO ball, but I do think that he can develop. He can develop into a guy that can get to the hoop with or without a screen. But I do think coming into the league, there will be an adjustment like any rookie.
Yep. And just lastly on the defense, personal fouls. Yeah, it's good to see he wasn't in the top two in personal fouls. So was he, sort of smart on that end? I guess not picking up ticky tack fouls.
Yeah, he was very smart on that end, and it's even more impressive when you consider he played the tied for the most amount of minutes on that out of those five guys there. So he was very disciplined on the defensive end in terms of drawing or fouling players, and he avoided getting into foul trouble. There were rarely games when you'd look at the score sheet and be like, "Oh, he's in trouble fouling out." That was few and far between.
Yep, great. And what is his go-to move or his number one offensive strength?
Yeah, the pick and roll, getting to the hoop, that's a big one. Then just the pull up three, that was definitely a go to, especially towards the end of the year. He if he saw a defender lacking and not giving him the respect that he deserves, then he was going to pull up from three, and a lot of the times knock those down.
Yep, no, that's good to hear. Obviously, he has that confidence. New York Knicks need that guard with some confidence and that moxie to not be afraid to take a big shot as well. And like I agree with you, I don't think the shot selection would be an issue long term going to the next level. This is clearly a team that he's tasked to carry the team. But what stood out for me, like I said, being underrated, was whenever there was an open man, whenever he penetrated, there was a dish to be had. He wouldn't force it and take contact. He would kick it out. He'd be a willing passer.
Yeah, and I think that goes back to getting into the flow of the offense. Once he decides he wants to get into the flow of the offense, he will look for guys and find guys in the right spot. I think a lot of those missed threes weren't even a part of the offense. It was just getting up the court and firing away right away. So a lot of those were early in the shot clock, not really getting into the offense.
Yep, absolutely. And we just tick over to the advanced stats now. So you could see, per possessions, he played the most possessions. Defensive rating, obviously had slightly the worst defensive rating. But given he played so many more minutes, wasn't a whole lot more. Offensive rating, it's interesting, 107. What stands out to you from these advanced stats?
Yeah, looking at the advanced stats, the 107 offensive rating stands out to me a little bit. I thought it would have been a little bit higher. And then, yeah, usage rate 27%. That is high, but it's not surprising based on the way he played. And then a 19.9 defensive rebounding percentage. That's higher than I expected, and that shows a lot about his ability to grab boards on the defensive end.
Yep. To me, what's also encouraging is the steal percentage on defense, 5.7. Um, that tells me, and like you just said, obviously he has the maturity and some size on some of these younger prospects. Like you said, they played high school competition as well. But do you see that as being something that it could be a calling card in the pro level? Is it something he just took advantage of, or is there a real substance to him being a solid defender?
Yes, I think so. I think that he like you see the stats there. He definitely got a lot of steals and was good at flustering his opponents. I think that he can bring that to the next level. I think he is. I do think there is the questions on being undersized, but I see that more on the offensive end. On the defensive end, I think he can compete with NBA guards.
Yeah. Is there that bit of that grit in him? Is he not just a finesse player? Is there some competitiveness and grittiness
There's
in there?
there's definitely some grittiness, and I think that a lot of that comes from his experience overseas. He came into this league with a lot more experience than probably more experience than any other player.
Mm.
So he's played against high level competition, and so that grittiness showed.
Yep. And if his role in the NBA is leading a team at some point, how was he with turnover percentages and down the stretch in close games? Was he making the right play, the right read a lot of the time?
Yeah, a lot of the time he was. Sometimes he missed some big shots, but he also made some big shots. So down the stretch in games, he wants to have the ball in his hands and he wants to put up that final shot. I think at the NBA level, he might not have that opportunity, nor may it be the right decision to have him taking those shots, but he's willing to take them, and that says a lot about his character.
Yep. No, thanks for that. That's great. The assist percentage as well, it's worth me mentioning, 24.2 assist percentage, shot creation. That's like I said, a lot of time he gets penetration and he dishes back out for an open shooter.
Yeah, like I said, when he gets into the flow of the offense, when he allows the offense to really run its motion, he can find guys and put guys in the right positions. You see guys like Alex Sarr, Dom Barlow, Jai Smith, all those guys are guys that play at the basket, that are post players that get most of their points at the hoop. Jai Smith was a guy, he probably had 90% of his points as lobs from John Montero. So
Yeah,
he was good at finding those guys at the hoop.
yeah, absolutely. And we just have a quick look at the per 100 possessions as well. Um, Obviously, yeah, the 1,300 possessions, the 3-point shooting, is a concern. But obviously, as Jacob mentioned, the attempts. You look at the attempts, 11 3-point attempts.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that just goes back to what we were talking about earlier. I would like to see him cut back on those 3-point attempts. I have no problem with him shooting 3-pointers if they're in the flow of the offense, but a lot of the times they just felt forced, and I think that's an indication that shows in the numbers. That's why I
Yep.
see that kind of numbers.
And the shot creation, basically 8 assists to the 4.6 turnover ratio. Given your observations, what contributed to that?
I think a lot of that is just having the ball in his hands all the time. You're going to have a high assist numbers. You're going to have high turnover numbers when you're having the ball in his hands as much as he did and controlling the offense. The entire offense runs through him, and so you're going to see really high assist numbers. You're going to see really high turnover numbers, but I think it's interesting to see that his assist number or his turnover numbers were lower than his teammate Jayzion Gortman, who was on the court a little bit less.
Yep. And of course, we mentioned the steals. 6 steals per 100 possessions. That's elite. And I guess now that we've had a look at that, Jacob, he's projected to be in the late first round. Do you see is any chance he could get into the lottery, or do you think it's most likely he'll stay 20 and 30?
Yeah, most likely I see him in that 20 to 30 range.
Yeah.
But if he has an incredible showing at the Nike Hoop Summit, if he plays great at the combine and participates in all the drills that he's expected to or people want him to, he has the chance to move into the lottery. But I would still expect him to fall in that 20 to 30 range.
Yep. And is there any kind of NBA teams that would be ideal fit or an ideal role for Jean Montero, for him to have his best foot forward in the league when he does get drafted? what do you think's an ideal role for him, in his first rookie seasons?
Well, going back to what I said with being in the 20 to 30 range, I think that could really be a benefit to him because then he goes to a team that is a contender that probably has a good starting point guard. I was looking at the Miami Heat. I think that would be a really good fit for him. Playing under Kyle Lowry, that would probably help him a ton. I do think that he needs to go to a team with a veteran point guard that he can learn under, that he can really learn how to be an NBA point guard, because I think that he was able to develop a lot of his skills at Overtime Elite, but he never really had a contemporary to look up to train his game after, to model his game after. He was one of the older guys there, and he was a guy that the other players looked up to. So he never had that player to look up to help him with his game. I think he needs that.
Yeah, I think so too. And I think there's a huge upside in refining that, as a floor general, because, like we said, the burden to carry a team, and obviously he wants to put up points, that's his bread and butter. And, when he's made this decision to go to Overtime Elite, the numbers need to pop. He had that pressure to really put up the points. And I think maybe not as focused on the other parts of his game as much. Whereas I think, if he had a more clear defined role on a college team, I think the other parts of his game may have shone a lot more.
Yeah, I think there are benefits to if he would have gone to college. But I think that by him going to Overtime Elite, we got to see the full package. We got to see him with the ball in his hands, doing what he does. And so I think NBA teams can look at that and say, okay, we can refine this. We can take these strengths and elevate them, and we can take those weaknesses and maybe cut those back a little bit.
Yeah. Maybe just for the viewers as well, give us maybe one or two wow moments throughout the season. Was there a few wow moments where you just thought, okay?
Yeah, well, you can see all the highlights, and you can see all of those wow moments. So I'll give you one that I found off the court. Was really after a game when he was inactive, he wasn't able to play. I see him in the practice gym. He's in a jeans, striped sweater, and he's just putting up shot after shot. And you just saw the work ethic there. He was always in the gym, always putting up shots, and always looking to improve his game. Like I said, you can see all the highlights on YouTube and on Twitter. He had plenty of amazing plays, but to see him after a game that he didn't even play in, still going out, putting up shots and refining his game, that was an eye opener.
Yeah, no, he definitely looks hungry. And I'll put the link into the description to the Overtime feature. They did a 10-minute feature on him. Did you check that out?
Yeah, I watched some of that, and then I know they play a lot of times they'll play those pregame at the games, and those are always fun to watch. They do a great job of curating content around the players and getting people to really know who these guys are, who these 26 athletes are.
Yep. Yeah, and of course, it leads us to, like we said, the Nike Hoop Summit. That's going to be huge for Jean Montero. He's confirmed for the world team as well. So that's going to be a real chance to see, like Jacob says, him up against, other high level competition. As we know, the Clutch Sports Pro Days, they're probably going to, if they do have him in that, they're going to accentuate his strengths, and it's going to be very scripted, per se.
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about the Clutch Pro Day and will he play in the Combine. We'll see what happens, but with the Nike Hoop Summit, that will be telling.
Yep, no, definitely. And let's just have a quick dive into other prospects, Jacob. While I've got you, March Madness so far as well. Who are your who do you really love, and who are some sleepers that you've liked so far?
Yeah, well, looking at the guys at the top of the draft, you've got the Chet Holmgrens, Jabari Smiths, you got Paolo Banchero, Jaden Ivey. Like all those guys are superb, and I'm excited to see them at the next level. I think that if we're looking at sleepers, if I really want to say Dom Barlow, Overtime Elite, he is a guy that I think is a major sleeper in this draft. I know some have him mid-second round. late second round. I see him as an early second rounder, maybe even first rounder. That might be a little bit of a stretch, but he's exactly what you want in a modern NBA 4. Can stretch the floor. He really worked on his three-point shooting a lot this year, and I think that he can offer a lot to NBA teams.
Yeah, definitely. And the overall strength of the class, Jacob, it's been talked about a lot about how it's not deep with superstars, but it's very deep in terms of NBA starting talent or contributors, from and parity from 10 to 30 something. Do you see it the same way? What are your thoughts on the strength of the class?
Yeah, I think it is deep all around. I think everyone wants to talk about the 2023 draft at the top of it, where you have Victor, you have Scoot Henderson. Those are the top of the top. Maybe they might be, if they were in this year's draft, they could be number one. But I think overall depth in this draft is a definite standout.
Yep, no, that's good to see. The New York Knicks, for Knicks fans watching, we're currently in the 11th selection, chance to move to 10, 9, and obviously always chance to move up. But yeah, some intriguing prospects, a lot of them. Really enjoyed talking to you about Jean Montero and diving further into that. You're welcome back anytime after March Madness, and we can chop it up a bit more.
Absolutely, I appreciate you having me on. This was great.
Yep, wonderful. And all the viewers can find Jacob on Twitter at Jacob POLACHEK as well, doing great work for Zag's blog, and anywhere else others can find you.
Yeah, all my social media is at Jacob Polacek. You can find my work on zagsblog.com. And if you're a fan of law firms, head over to law.com. We got some law firm content for you, but for the basketball content, that's for Zag's blog, Made Hoops. That's where I do my stuff.
Yep, yeah, amazing. And I guess what's next for you right now? Are you are doing a lot of coverage for the tourney?
Yeah, I'm doing a little bit of coverage for the tournament, but for the most part, my coverage is for law.com. That's where I do most of my work from Monday to Friday, 9 to 5. So I don't have as much time to watch the tournament all day, but I watch a good amount, and I'll be having a Overtime Elite story coming soon.
Okay, wonderful. Yep, well, stay tuned. The links will be in the description. If you've enjoyed this interview, really appreciate it if you hit the like button, subscribe to the channel. We'll be bringing you more draft coverage on Knicks Buzz, and we'll see you on the next one. And Jacob, it's been a pleasure, and take care.
Awesome. Thank you so much.